While some Sonic bosses are unforgettable for amazing climaxes to thrilling storytelling, some are unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. Or some are just plain forgettable in all honesty. Today we're ranking every single boss from the original 1991 Sonic the Hedgehog. And boy oh boy, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Each boss is going to get a score out of 15, and there will be 3 separate scoring categories. Challenge, which is how tough the fight actually is. Narrative impact, how much it matters in the story, or if it has a satisfying payoff of some kind. And design, so essentially the aesthetic, the creativity, the cool factor, or to be honest, does it just have the sauce, you know? Each category provides a maximum of 5 points, and it can go up to a total of 15 if you combine all 3. I think that makes sense. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Our lowest ranking is the Egg Scorcher, with a measly 5 out of 15. Thus, we have got the boss of Marble Zone, and boy oh boy, this one's a bit of a snooze fest. Eggman shows up with his little lava drip machine, slowly lowering fire onto the crumbling platforms, and that is it. That's the mechanic of the boss. Nothing more to it as long as you decide not to jump into the lava in the middle, I guess. Challenge. It's a 1 out of 5. Unless you decide to jump into the lava in the middle, or stay right underneath Eggman when he's dropping lava on your head, you're not going to die to this boss. Narrative impact? It's barely there, so it gets a 2. Yeah, it's technically part of Sonic's journey through the lava-filled ruins, but it doesn't build tension, nor does it push the story forward. It's just kind of there. It exists, you know? And design? Well, it's a lukewarm 2 out of 5. Lava is cool in theory, but the execution is rather bland, lacks the flavour. The Eggman mech barely changes and the lava drip animation is laughably slow. Therefore, the final score for Marble Zone is 5 out of 15. This boss isn't bad enough to be memorable, and not good enough to be exciting. It's the definition of filler, the kind of boss that makes you think, oh right, this guy, upon replaying the game. Next is the Egg Stinger from Springyard Zone, and it brings a bit more flair, and this boss at least tries to do something a little different, but it's still kind of a weird one and makes it difficult to rank. That is why I'm going to give it 5th place here. Eggman pops up from the ceiling with his spiky drill mech, smashing chunks of platform below you. It's basically a reverse whack-a-mole, but with a mild sense of urgency. Yeah, it's a fun one. Challenge, it's going to get to 2 out of 5. You can fall into the pit if you're careless or trying to speedrun the boss, but overall it's not much tougher than the previous bosses in the game. The real challenge is just to keep your footing. Narrative impact, unfortunately it's going to be another 2 out of 5 here. The zone is cool, but this fight doesn't feel like a climax. It's just a slightly different flavour of Eggman popping up to ruin your evening. Design, this is where it's going to get a 4 out of 5, because it's easily the boss's strongest trait. The Neon City vibes, the drill mech itself, the collapsing arena, it's all got style and a unique taste to it, even if the fight itself doesn't quite capitalise on this. Therefore, the final score is going to be an 8 out of 15. It's flashy, it's bouncy, and it shows a hint of ambition. While it's not in the great tier, it's at least trying to put on a show and give the player a bit of fun, you know? With the same score as the Egg Stinger, we've got the boss of Green Hill Zone, the Egg Wrecker. Eggman swinging a wrecking ball from his Eggmobile, and let's be honest, this fight is rather easy. But then again, this is exactly what you want from your first boss in a video game series. Hence, this is why I'm going to give it 4th place, despite it having the same score as the Egg Stinger. Challenge, I'm going to give it a generous 1 out of 5. He swings, you jump. That is it. That's all there is to this boss. If you end up losing to this boss, I'm going to guess you either sneezed mid-jump, or you dropped your controller, and that's okay. It happens. It feels a little harsh to rank it this low, but I mean, the boss is genuinely easy. Narrative impact, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, surprisingly. Why? Because it's the first ever Sonic boss. It sets the tone for every encounter after it. It's the original, Eggman is up to something no good, go stop him moment, you know? Design, a solid 3 out of 5. While the wrecking ball is simple, it's effective. It's instantly recognisable, it's very iconic, but unfortunately I won't say there's much flair beyond that. It's mainly its long-lasting impact in this series. That is why it gained this score. Final score is 8 out of 15. A fairly good score for the first ever boss in a series. It only loses out on challenge really, and that's what drags it down, but it's the first boss, so overall I would say it's pretty solid. Next is the final boss in the final boss zone, the Eggman Crusher. This is the end of the road. No rings, no room for error. The final zone drops you into a dark, silent chamber with Eggman hiding inside his giant crushing pistons. It's stripped down, tense, and oddly quiet for a final showdown. But it leaves a strong mark at first glance. Therefore, it just about squeezes into our top 3. Challenge? It's a 3 out of 5. You've got no rings, so one mistake does equal your death here, and that feels pretty brutal if I'm honest. But the actual fight is manageable. The piston patterns are simple, and Eggman doesn't attack beyond trying to squash you and the electric ball things that are in the air. I don't know what to call them, but yeah, the difficulty curve is rather flat. What you see is what you get. Narrative impact, 4 out of 5. This is where the final zone earns its flowers here. The sudden silence, a sterile environment, the no rings twist that catches first time players off guard. This is it. There's no dramatic cutscene, there's no mood shift. And you know what? The actual tone of the zone does a lot of its storytelling. It's cold, minimal, ominous. It feels like you're in Eggman's last line of defense. And obviously, it is the end of the first game. It's quite a lot of narrative importance here. Ah yes, the Labyrinth Zone boss. Why do I think I'm going to get crucified for this? The one that doesn't want to really be a boss fight. Instead, it's a stress-inducing water chase where the real enemy is oxygen. Eggman doesn't even fight you directly here. He just runs away while the room floods and you desperately try not to drown. But honestly, it works, and that's how somehow it managed to squeeze into second place in this ranking. Challenge, a solid 4 out of 5. It's not hard in the traditional sense, but the pressure is real. Between the rising water, the disappearing platforms, and Sonic's tragic inability to swim, this boss delivers panic, nothing but. Narrative impact, unfortunately this does let the boss down. It's going to be just a 2 here. There's no story payoff, no cutscene moment, and to be honest there's not even a major feeling of victory when it ends, because when you do catch up to Eggman, it just dips, the game shrugs it off and you move on. So unfortunately, it's just a 2. Design, a strong 4 out of 5. The setting is atmospheric, the vertical climb is memorable, and it's different from every other boss in the game, for better and worse. Therefore, we're going to give it a final score of 10 out of 15. It's more of a psychological thriller than an actual boss fight. It leaves a lasting impression, however. You may not love it, but I'll tell you what, you'll definitely remember it. Last, but certainly not least, we have our top ranking, the Starlight Zone boss. Now this is a glow up. After all the weird lava traps and underwater trauma, Starlight Zone rolls in and secures the top spot in our rankings. The boss here has Eggman dropping bombs while you launch them back at him using seesaws. It's simple, but it kind of feels like a game mechanic rather than a tech demo or a typical boss fight on jumping on top of Eggman. It is using the game's mechanics really well. It lets you mess with the physics rather than forcing you into a particular scenario, and I find that pretty fun. Challenge, a 3 out of 5. The bombs fall fast, and if your timing's off, you're going to be taking damage, but once you get that rhythm, it's one of the more fair and enjoyable fights in the game. Narrative impact, it's just going to be a 2 here. Like most bosses in Sonic 1, there's no real build-up or payoff per se. It's just Eggman doing Eggman things, and then fleeting like the cartoon villain he is. Still, the city gives it a slightly more final act feel, I guess, than the earlier zones. Design, a perfect 5 out of 5. The backdrop, gorgeous. The music of the boss fights, it's here and a whole mood. The bomb mechanic, well, it's actually fun to mess around with and get your payback on Eggman for once. It's the most aesthetically pleasing boss in the game also, and one that feels like it belongs maybe in a modern Sonic game. It could easily, make it into a 3D game and be pretty fun. Final score, 10 out of 15. Not overly difficult, not overly meaningful, but got a whole lot of style and flavour. And finally, when you top that off with a sprinkle of clever gameplay, it makes it one of the game's high points for sure. And there you have it. Every boss from the original Sonic the Hedgehog ranked and judged, and I guess slightly roasted. Looking back, it's honestly wild how much variety these bosses had, even in such an early platformer. Some were iconic, some were laughable, and some were just, let's say, doing their best. But you know what? That's what makes Sonic 1 special. is figuring itself out, and these bosses laid the groundwork for some truly legendary showdowns in the later games. Some Sonic bosses stick with you because they deliver epic finales and nail that thrilling showdown, while others, well, they're memorable for all the wrong reasons, or they just fade into the background altogether. After ranking every boss from the original Sonic the Hedgehog in my last video, I'm back to tackle Sonic the Hedgehog 2 today, a game that stepped things up in every way, from faster gameplay to bigger, more intense boss battles. Each boss fight will be scored out of 15 points, split across 3 categories. Challenge, how tough and engaging the boss fight is. Enjoyment, how much fun I had personally in beating it. Design, which is the look and creativity and the general cool factor. Each category will be split into 5 points, making it easy to see which bosses truly stand out and which ones are kinda, well, I guess, a little bit stinky. The Egg Bouncer. The Egg Bouncer stands out, but not in a good way. For me, it's easily the weakest boss in Sonic 2, feeling like it could belong in any zone or any game, rather than this distinctly industrial metropolis. The fight lacks uniqueness and doesn't reflect the level's theme, making it forgettable and a rather generic encounter. Challenge, it's a 2 out of 5. The Egg Bouncer is one of the damage boost bosses. The main strategy is to get hit, grab a ring, and then attack as many times as you can while you have your invincibility frames. It's not particularly demanding, but it does require quite a lot of timing and patience, I guess. Enjoyment, 2 out of 5. Honestly, I find this boss pretty lame. It feels like a huge letdown, especially since it's the final normal zone boss. It lacks excitement and doesn't leave too much of an impression on me. Design, it's a 2 out of 5. This boss is a massive disappointment design-wise. It doesn't incorporate the Metropolis Zone's industrial theme all too well, and genuinely it barely attacks you, just flies from side to side. The clones add some threat, I guess, but overall it's a poorly designed boss that doesn't live up to the level's atmosphere. And you know what? I'm one of those weird people that actually really like Metropolis Zone, so I find this to be a disappointment. Final score, 6 out of 15. Egg Bouncer is a major missed opportunity. It lacks personality, challenge, and any real connection to the Metropolis Zone's unique vibe. For a game that excels in memorable bosses, this one just feels generic and, I guess, uninspired. A disappointing way to close out the standard zones. The Egg Hammer. This one feels like a bit of a letdown compared to what you might typically expect from a big swinging hammer. The trick is, if you head over to the far right as soon as the fight starts, you can stand safely on the rising totem pole and barely interact with the rest of the boss. As long as the hammer doesn't accidentally hit you, you can just spam hits on Eggman from above, which definitely cuts the challenge down a little bit. Speaking of, challenge, 2 out of 5. With that strategy, the boss basically becomes a slow tap fest. The arrows below don't feel threatening at all, and the hammer swings are easy to avoid from your perch. So while it looks like it should be tough, this fight ends up being pretty effortless if I'm honest. On top of this, even playing the boss as intended is not really that difficult with how slow the arrows actually travel. Enjoyment, it's a 2 out of 5. Due to the low challenge and minimal input needed to win, this fight feels a little underwhelming in the grand scheme of Sonic 2's bosses. It doesn't really push you, and the most efficient tactic feels more like a loophole rather than a fair challenge. A harsh ranking, but one that feels warranted. Design, it's a 3 out of 5. That said, I'm glad the boss is not underwater, even though the stages seem that way. The overall aesthetic works well, and the mech looks like it could deliver a serious punch. Plus the hammer motif is a classic Eggman touch that we see more of in future games, which is cool for the fans who appreciate the continuity there. Final score is a 7 out of 15. Egghammer looks the part, but ends up being an easy and somewhat boring fight if you do know the trick. It's solid visually, but could have packed a bit more punch gameplay wise. The Egg Scorcher Mark II. Now this theme is a nostalgic one for me, mainly because I used to use it as my old outro music. Those who know what I'm on about. Anyway, Hilltop Zone's Egg Scorcher Mark II is a bit tougher than its Sonic 1 predecessor, but it is still pretty manageable. Eggman spreads fire across your only safe ground, so timing is key here. Though I do usually manage to avoid lava damage unless I get greedy. Honestly, sometimes I just damage boost through this boss, which speaks to how quickly you can pile on the hits here. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. The fire attacks add pressure, but the fight isn't too demanding overall. It's a slight step up from the original Egg Scorcher, but it's still easy to handle once you get the hang of it. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. It's fine. Nothing really exciting and nothing particularly frustrating either. The boss kind of just exists as a functional challenge, without leaving a strong impression. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. The design fits the volcanic hilltop zone theme well, and feels like a solid upgrade over the Egg 1 Scorcher. Conceptually, a submarine built to traverse lava is an amazing idea, even if the fight doesn't fully capitalise on that potential. Final score is an 8 out of 15. Egg Scorcher Mark II is a decent mid-tier boss that fits its environment but doesn't make a huge impact. It's reliable and it's thematic, but it falls a bit flat on the excitement and the challenge. The Egg Marine. The Egg Marine marks a key turning point in Sonic 2's journey. Up until this boss, the stages have leaned heavily on natural and vibrant environments. But with Oil Ocean Zone and this fight in particular, the game shifts towards a more industrial, mechanical atmosphere. This transition is reflected not only in the level design, but also in the Egg Marine's menacing machine-like form and its varied attacks. It's a subtle but important narrative and aesthetic shift that signal the game's move into darker, more complex territory. Challenge. It's a 1 out of 5. As long as you know how to press the jump button over and over, you will not get hit, I guarantee you. It's the first boss that comes to mind where heading into the danger ensures your safety, as when you are in the oil underneath the platform that you are supposed to stand on, you literally cannot get hit the entire fight. I am not joking, so yes, it's a 1 out of 5. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. This is going to sound like really strange, but I kind of enjoy using the dominance strategy. There is something about knowing that this boss would be so much harder if I played it properly and didn't know how to exploit it. So yeah, there's a level of fun for me there. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. This might seem a little generous, but hear me out. This boss marks a crucial turning point in the game. The zones slowly shift from natural environments to more mechanical ones, and this organic storytelling becomes very clear with this dystopian future-inspired boss. It has a variety of attacks, including laser blasts, a spiked mechanical arm, and overall, it's just very well designed, which is rare for the bosses in this game. Final score, 8 out of 15. While the challenge is on the easier side, the Egg Marine offers surprising depth in gameplay, with its multiple attack patterns and the need to master positioning. Combined with its strong thematic presence, this boss marks a meaningful shift in Sonic 2's progression and keeps the fight engaging. Just for reference though, doesn't mean I like Oil Ocean Zone. Just putting that out there. The Egg Drillster. Here's the thing, this boss is not going to blow your mind, but it doesn't really need to. It's the first fight in Sonic 2 and it plays its role perfectly. A breezy intro that lets you bounce on Eggman's head while the tropical vibes roll in. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. There's not a whole lot of danger here. Eggman cruises in with his little spiked drillmobile and drives from side to side. As long as you don't mistime your jumps, you're golden. It's light, it's easy, and that's all intentional. This boss is meant to be to teach the player and not to test the player. Enjoyment. A 4 out of 5. For what it is, it's fun. There's something satisfying about bouncing off of Eggman to upbeat music and watching him flail away after just a few hits. It doesn't overstay its welcome as it's real easy to beat, and it delivers that classic Sonic boss rhythm with a light-hearted tone. Not thrilling, but definitely enjoyable. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. It's clean and readable, but not especially inventive. The drill car is fine, albeit a bit forgettable, and the backdrop, well, it's the colourful environment of Emerald Hill Zone, so it doesn't bring much to the table in terms of atmosphere, but it's at least visual storytelling. Final score, it's a 9 out of 15. The Emerald Hill boss is simple but charming. It doesn't try to wow you, but it leaves a good impression and gets the job done with style. A strong start, not flashy, but undeniably fun. The Egg Digger. The Egg Digger is a memorable boss for me. It was a real test back in the day. I don't think I made it past this one actually until I was maybe about, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14, so maybe I am a little biased here. Nowadays though, it's not too tough, especially if you know the patterns, and I often just find myself damage boosting through it. Challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. There are a lot of spikes dropping from the ceiling that you need to dodge, plus those relentless drills that can catch you if you rush it are quite hard to manage. It demands some more patience and timing, especially if you want to avoid taking hits. Moving too quickly is almost as risky as being too slow, which adds a nice layer of tension to the fight. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. It feels intense to fight, and I get a little thrill every time I manage to dodge every spike that rains down from above. The constant pressure of the drills and the spikes keeps you locked in, making each successful hit feel earned and satisfying. Design. A 3 out of 5. I mean, big drills are cool. I've always thought so anyway. Maybe that's why I like the Pokemon Excadrill or Venture from Overwatch. Anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked there. The boss keeps thematic consistency once again and uses its theme really well. Final score. It's a 9 out of 15. The Egg Digger strikes a good balance between challenge and fun, with a design that fits the level's theme quite nicely. It's a boss that demands focus without feeling overwhelming, and those spikes and drills keep the tension alive. Not the most memorable fight, but definitely a solid and satisfying one. The Egg Sludger. I couldn't find a definitive title when I was researching this boss in particular. I've seen Egg Poison, I've seen Water Eggman, but I didn't like the sound of those names at all, so until I find out the official name, I'm rolling with the Egg Sludger. Anyway, you've raced through tubes, dodged toxic goo, and survived the most infamous water trap in the series up to this point. And now it's time to face Eggman. The boss at the end of Chemical Plant Zone might look basic on the surface, but there's a surprising amount of room for mistakes, especially if you're trying to rush it. Challenge. Surprisingly, it's a 4 out of 5. This one can catch you off guard. Eggman floats above a disappearing floor, dropping chemical capsules that leave damage-dealing sludge on top of you, the only safe area being the central platforms. It seems simple, but if you get impatient and fall into the pool below, it's an instant death. Not many regular bosses in this game offer an instant kill potential, so it can be a little scary, even when you've got experience. One misstep and you're toast, especially if the goo gets you and knocks you into the pool, or the timing throws you off. It's not hard once you slow down and take your time, but if you're trying to speedrun the game, it can be surprisingly punishing. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. It's a decent fight, the vertical layout adds a layer of tension, and smacking Eggman while dodging the sludge can feel pretty satisfying. But the arena's tight spacing, and the potential for cheap deaths, can make it feel a little frustrating if I'm honest, especially on your first few playthroughs. Still, it's more engaging than the first boss, and keeps you on your toes. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. The arena feels a little, let's say, sterile, like it could have used some more visual flair to match the wild energy of the zone itself. The sludge capsules are a cool concept, and the vertical movement gives it some structure, but visually and conceptually, it doesn't do a whole lot to wow the player. Final score. 10 out of 15. What a flashy boss, but more dangerous than it looks. It's a solid step up from Emerald Hill, offering a real chance to slip up, while still keeping things relatively straightforward. My advice? Just don't rush it. Chemical Plant's final test can be very, very punishing if you are reckless. Barrier Eggman. Barrier Eggman presents a solid challenge that truly signals the intensity of Sonic 2's endgame. The enclosed arena, guarded by barriers, forces you to master tight movement and quick reflexes as you dodge spiky platforms and a deadly laser. It's a boss fight that keeps you on your toes and feels like a fitting climax to Wing Fortress Zone. Challenge. It's a 4 out of 5. Barrier Eggman is a decently tough boss. The unpredictable movements of the 3 spiky platforms make it easy to get hit if you're not paying close attention. The laser beam attack from the top adds another layer of difficulty. It doesn't fire constantly, but when it does, it opens right before you need to attack it, and it lasts long enough to keep you on edge. The enclosed space created by the barriers on each side also ramps up the challenge, as there's less room to maneuver, and it makes it a lot easier for you to lose all of your rings if you get hit. Enjoyment. It's a 4 out of 5. When you fight Barrier Eggman, you'll know you're truly in the endgame, and the pressure really hits you. It's genuinely fun to overcome the difficulty, especially since it feels like Eggman is on the run. with just one barrier standing between you and victory. Interestingly, whether intentional or not, the enclosed space and close quarters kind of remind me of the Eggman Crusher fight from Sonic 1. It gives me that nostalgic feel for Sonic 1. Design, 4 out of 5. Barrier Eggman is a well-designed boss. It can hurt you in several ways and quickly take you out if you get near the edge and lose your rings. However, it misses a perfect score because it doesn't incorporate enough unique elements from Wing Fortress. Don't get me wrong, I don't know how it would do that, but based on this ranking, it fails to accomplish that, so it's a 4 out of 5. Final score, 12 out of 15. I was genuinely surprised by this. Barrier Eggman delivers a tense and satisfying boss fight that raises the stakes as Sonic 2 nears its conclusion. Its varied attacks and tight arena create a genuine sense of urgency and challenge. While it could lean further into Wing Fortress, and it really should have done, it remains one of the more memorable and engaging battles in the game. The Egg Claw. This boss adds a bit more edge to the fight, with a giant claw mech swinging around and dropping spike balls that keep you on your toes. It's not about just timing your attacks, you've got to watch your positioning carefully, especially with that electric current lurking underneath the mech. Challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. The go-to strategy here is to spin dash up the walls to hit Eggman, which can make the fight a little bit easier if you are struggling, especially if you pull it off consistently. But don't get too cocky. Missing your jumps or approaching from the wrong angle means you'll likely get zapped by the electric current or hit by those spike balls. It demands a bit more precision than what you've seen in the earlier bosses. Enjoyment. It's a 4 out of 5. I always really enjoyed this boss, funnily enough. It's super fun to fight, probably because there are different ways to approach it. That said, I do find myself leaning into that dominant strategy most of the time, which is the one I mentioned, spin dashing up on the walls. Design. It's a 5 out of 5. I genuinely can't think of a way to improve this boss's design. It perfectly suits the casino themed level and even incorporates the unique gimmick of how you attack the mech. The skill ceiling is high, the colours are vibrant, and the mech ties everything together beautifully. Final score, 12 out of 15. The Egg Claw strikes a great balance between challenge, fun and design. It's a boss that keeps you engaged without feeling frustrating, and it fits that casino vibe perfectly. Definitely one of the more memorable fights in Sonic 2. Mecha Sonic. As you enter the Death Egg Zone, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. The tension is palpable. The zone's dark, mechanical setting feels like Eggman's personal playground, and you immediately notice you have no rings as the boss slowly lowers down to you. This absence isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it's a clear signal that things are about to get even more serious. Mecha Sonic embodies this intensity perfectly, making the fight feel like a true test of skill and nerve. Challenge. It's a 4 out of 5. Mecha Sonic is a tough boss, especially since you start the fight with no rings. One mistake can mean instant death, which makes the pressure real from the get-go. It usually takes me a few attempts to learn its attack patterns, but once you do, you can start to master this fight and ace it. Enjoyment. It's a 5 out of 5. I personally get a lot of enjoyment from this boss because it feels incredibly rewarding once you've learned its patterns. Small techniques like spin dashing when Mecha Sonic charges at you for extra damage, or anticipating its jumps and spin dashes, add a satisfying layer of skill to the fight. Overcoming these challenges makes the battle truly gratifying. Design. It's a 5 out of 5 again. Mecha Sonic stands out as a unique boss in the series. It's the first boss that isn't actually Eggman himself. Instead, you can see Eggman watching the fight with excitement, hoping for your defeat. This small but meaningful detail elevates the boss design further for me. Eggman's frustration at losing to Sonic has led him to create Mecha Sonic, a mechanical doppelganger with the moveset closely mirroring your own abilities. The fight is not only challenging, but also fun and cleverly crafted, making it one of the best designed bosses in the game. Final score, 14 out of 15. Mecha Sonic delivers an intense, thrilling boss fight that perfectly captures the high stakes of the Death Egg Zone. Its unique design, clever moveset, and high difficulty combine to create a rewarding challenge that stands out in the Sonic series. This fight isn't just about reflexes, it's a true test of mastery and conquering. It feels like a major accomplishment when you beat it. Death Egg Robot. The climatic showdown of Sonic 2, the Death Egg robot delivers an epic battle that tests everything you've learned throughout the game. With the mechanical fortress looming around you and no rings to protect yourself, you quickly realise this is Eggman's final test for you, and survival demands precision and nerves of steel. Challenge. It's a 5 out of 5. While the Death Egg robot's attack pattern might be easier to learn than Mecha Sonic's once you know what you're doing, the real challenge comes from having to fight both bosses back to back without any rings. One mistake and it's back to the start of the zone. The pattern itself is simple but effective. You need to avoid getting crushed, time your jumps perfectly to dodge the spiked arms, and know when to approach and retreat in order to avoid being shot by the fast moving mechanical arms. It's a test of patience, precision, and endurance. Enjoyment. It's a 5 out of 5. This fight is the pinnacle of Sonic 2's boss battles. The tension runs so high that sometimes I just want it to be over just because of how stressed I get, and that's exactly how I know that I care and that I'm fully engaged in the fight. It's a deeply fun and intense experience that helped to define for me what a final boss in a 2D platformer should feel like. Design. It's a 5 out of 5. Arguably, it is one of the most iconic bosses in Sonic the Hedgehog's history, and Sonic Team knows it. That's why the Death Egg robot has made multiple returns throughout the series. It's one of the ultimate big bads in Sonic the Hedgehog. It's tough, visually impressive, and a fitting finale to an incredible game. Its design perfectly captured the scale and stakes of the final battle. Final score. It's a 15 out of 15. The Death Egg robot stands as the ultimate test and climax of Sonic 2, blending challenge, excitement, and iconic design into one unforgettable boss fight. It's a fitting end to a legendary game and a shining example of what a final battle in a 2D platformer can be. And there you have it. Every boss from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 ranked. Looking back, it's kinda wild how Sonic 2 stepped up the game with bigger, flashier bosses and even more creative chaos. Some battles were epic showdowns that still get your heart racing, and others, well, let's say they gave me at least plenty of reasons to keep retrying them. But that's exactly what makes Sonic 2 such a classic. It nailed the formula while still pushing boundaries, and these bosses set the stage for some truly unforgettable fights in the Sonic series. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, as I've got more Sonic content coming your way. Maybe we'll take Typically, Sonic bosses push your skills to the absolute limit, with flashy attacks and intense timing, and then some are the Egg Bouncer from Sonic 2. The less said the better on that one though. Sonic CD does things very differently. Instead of sticking to the classic formula, Sonic CD takes a more experimental approach. Bosses here aren't always about raw combat. Sometimes you're dodging hazards, outsmarting Eggman, or just trying to figure out what the fight even is. It's weird, it's creative, and whether it works or not, well, I guess that's what we're here to find out. Now, I'll be honest, I have way less experience with Sonic CD compared to the first two games, but over the past week I've played through it maybe 3 times to really get a feel for these bosses and figure out where they stand. Each boss will be ranked out of 15 points, and we'll score them across 3 separate categories. Firstly is challenge. That's basically how tough is the boss or how demanding is the fight. Next is enjoyment. How fun is it, or how satisfying is it to beat? And finally is design. This is the creativity, the visuals, and the overall cool factor per se. There will be 5 points max in each category, with a total of 15 up for grabs. Some of these bosses surprised me, so let's dive into every Sonic CD boss and rank them from worst to best. Firstly is the Egg Havoc, or Egg HVC001, with a total of 5 out of 15. Egg Havoc kicks off the boss lineup in Sonic CD, but it's hardly a memorable encounter. The fight feels more like a brief annoyance than any real challenge, lacking the flair or creativity you'd hope for a first boss in a Sonic game. Challenge. It's a 1 out of 5. This boss is barely a speed bump if I'm honest. If you run to the far right side of the screen and then wait, the boss literally can't touch you. It will not do a thing. It only gets a single point because if you don't know this trick, the fight might, and I mean it might, last more than 20 seconds. That's about as generous as I can be here. Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. I won't say the fight isn't fun at all, there's something amusing about how quickly it comes and goes, but it's over so fast that there's no real gratification from beating it. It barely has time to exist before it's done, so this ranking feels warranted. Design. It's a 2 out of 5. The design feels, let's say, generic, with a basic sprite and no real connection to Palm Tree Panic's colourful, vibrant setting. The zone is awesome, however, its boss is not. It's an uninspired start to the boss roster, and I think having an actual weapon equipped on the boss would have really helped it out. Next is the Egg Spinner, the final boss of the game, which gets an 8 out of 15. For a game as visually wild and mechanically creative as Sonic CD, the final boss is, let's say, kind of a shrug. Like, it's not bad, but after racing Metal Sonic and warping through time zones, you'd hope for something a little more climatic than a stationary pod with a few spinning arms. Eggman's last stand doesn't quite stick the landing as much as I would hope. Challenge is a 2 out of 5. This is unfortunately one of those damage boost bosses, and yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. There's little incentive to play carefully when you can just tank a hit and then wail in the hits on him. Unlike previous classic Sonic games, you actually get rings as well, which removes a lot of the tension you'd normally feel in a final fight, such as the end of Sonic 2 and 1 for example. The only thing stopping you from winning quickly is, well, I guess choosing not to. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. It's fine, I guess. There's nothing offensive about this fight, and it controls well enough. The animations are clean, and there's some variety in the way the arms spin, and then they try and swat you on occasion as well, which adds another dynamic to the fight. But unfortunately, that is kind of it. Compared to the high-stake finales of Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the Egg Spinner just doesn't bring much to the table. It's serviceable, but it doesn't leave much of an impression. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. At least thematically, it fits quite well. The metallic sterile look of the room matches Metallic Madness, and the boss's design is coherent with the aesthetic of Eggman's machines throughout the game. But as a final boss, it feels underwhelming. There's no real escalation or spectacle, just another weird machine that looks like it could have come from any other zone. Final score. It's an 8 out of 15. Egg Spinner isn't a bad fight. I don't get it twisted, it's fine, it does its job, but it's definitely a weak finale. After a game full of creativity and bold ideas, this boss just plays it safe. It works mechanically, but doesn't excite or challenge the player in a way that a true final boss should. A flat ending to an otherwise fascinating game. And next we have the Egg Bubble, with a total of 8 out of 15. The Egg Bubble is the boss of Tidal Tempest, and while it fits the underwater theme well, it's not exactly a standout encounter. It's easy, it's slow, and while it's not bad, it's not all that memorable either. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. This is a really easy boss. The water poses no real threat thanks to the constant stream of bubbles you can breathe from, and the small shots that Eggman fires out are slow and easy to avoid. Unless you're actively trying to take damage, it's hard to imagine this boss giving you any real trouble. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. This boss is fine. It reminds me a bit of the Egg Bouncer from Sonic 2 if I'm honest, but this is definitely more enjoyable, mainly because Eggman actually fights back, and I like that in a boss. That said, it still doesn't leave much of an impression as I mentioned, it's just kind of there, not overly annoying, and kind of forgettable. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. The design fits the zone really well, and I appreciate that it tries something unique with the underwater setting. The bubble mechanic plays off the universal fear of Sonic's drowning, which is a pretty neat idea, I think it's pretty cool. But unfortunately, in its execution, it is a little bit slow and clunky. That's due to the underwater physics of Sonic the Hedgehog, and we all know how that is in the classic games. But this, unfortunately, does hold it back from being more exciting. Final score. It's an 8 out of 15. Egg Bubble delivers a solid underwater concept, but it's dragged down by sluggish pacing and a lack of impact. It's not a bad boss, but it doesn't do enough to stand out either. Functional, thematic, and a little bit forgettable. And next we have the Egg Conveyor with another 8 out of 15. Please do forgive me, I know that's 3 bosses in a row that have been ranked at 8 out of 15, which means they're fairly interchangeable, but the order I put them in here is literally just how much of an impact they left on me, I guess. Completely subjective, so please do forgive me. Anyway, it might just be the easiest boss in the entire game. That or the first boss. But anyway, even with its complete lack of challenge, it somehow manages to deliver one of the more memorable and cinematic moments in the entire game. Challenge. Well, it's a 1 out of 5. This barely qualifies as a boss fight. Well, kind of is. You can literally just hold right and win provided you have rings. As long as you literally have one ring, you're probably not going to die. This then might make it easier than the Egg Havoc from Palm Tree Panic, since this one doesn't even require timing, just a single input. One button press and Eggman's done for. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. And yet, hear me out, but I enjoy this boss. There's tension in the scene, even if it's manufactured more by the visuals than the actual gameplay. I can see the vision the developers had here. It's fun to choose to play it properly, dodging the sparks and avoiding the hits, rather than just coasting through it by holding right. Watching Eggman slowly panic as he inches closer and closer to the grinder is oddly satisfying, and it brings a unique kind of joy. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. This is definitely the strongest part of the fight. Once again, Sonic CD ditches the typical jump on Eggman 8 or so times formula in favour of something more creative. It's really a fun concept that's been explored, well, visually and mechanically, let's say. It's just a shame the difficulty wasn't tuned up even just a little bit, because everything else, the drama, the setup, the energy, is hitting some great highs. Final score. It's an 8 out of 15. Egg Conveyor is the definition of style over substance. It barely asks anything from the player, but still leaves an impression thanks to its presentation and creativity. It's not a good fight, but it is a fun moment, and sometimes I think we gamers forget, but that is more than enough. We are here for fun, and this boss has it in abundance. Next is the Egg Tilter from Collision Chaos with a 9 out of 15, and, well, it's fittingly named, because this boss genuinely tilts me. I'm joking. It's not difficult in the traditional sense, but it is one of the more frustrating experiences in the game, especially if pinball physics aren't your strong suit, and I find that out quite often. Anyway, challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. I've never died to this boss, and I've never really come close either, but that doesn't mean it's smooth sailing. The challenge here comes more from wrangling the physics than actually avoiding danger. It's essentially a pinball table, with Eggman occasionally making an appearance, and your success depends more on your angles and timing than traditional platforming skill. So depending on how good you are at pinball, this fight might be quite quick, or it could end up being quite the drag. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. Even though I'm not the best at pinball, I do appreciate what this boss is trying to do. It's a welcome addition to the boss roster because it spices things up and breaks away from the usual formula once more. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Egg Claw from Sonic 2, but this takes the pinball concept even further. And thankfully, it doesn't really overstay its welcome either. It's over fairly quickly, and I wouldn't be surprised if this helped to inspire Sonic's pinball. Again, that's not fact, it's just I feel like it could have been inspiration for it. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. This is where the boss really shines. The arena fits Collision Chaos perfectly, and it uses the zone's chaotic pinball elements to full effect. The downside? You barely interact with Eggman himself during the fight. It kind of feels like you're just bouncing around until something works, which weakens the impact of it being a boss battle. Final score. It's a 9 out of 15. Egg Tilter is more of a gimmick than a proper boss fight, but to its credit, it is a fun gimmick. It fits the zone really well and adds some variety to the lineup. It's not particularly satisfying to beat, and the lack of interaction with Eggman drags it down, but for what it is, it does the job very well. Following on is the Egg Razor, with a total of 10 out of 15. Sonic CD continues to embrace its signature brand of unique 2D boss design concepts with the Egg Razor, and honestly, I'm all here for it. It's simple, unpretentious, and nails that classic Sonic vibe, while adding just enough spectacle to make it stand out. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. This one's pretty straightforward and easy to beat. The basic tactic, just jump on one of the inner platforms that drop down, rinse and repeat. No tricky gimmicks or surprise mix-ups to keep you on your toes. That said, if you're careless, you can get hit and fall all the way back down to the start of the boss area, which adds a teensy-weensy bit of tension and earns a point for its risks. Enjoyment. It's a 4 out of 5. This fight definitely nails that big bad boss vibe, which makes the whole thing feel surprisingly epic despite the simplicity. The enclosed space collapsing around you as you scramble upwards adds a real sense of urgency and danger. It's a blast to navigate the platforms and climb higher, turning what could have been a dull fight into something that actually feels exciting and dynamic. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. This is a well-crafted boss from a visual and mechanical standpoint. The aesthetic meshes perfectly with Wacky Workbench's chaotic top-tier composition leading into the fight. It all feels like a natural extension of the zone's identity. The upward climb adds momentum and tension, turning the room itself into the challenge. In a way, it feels like Sonic CD took the infamous run from the wall sequence that Labyrinth Zone initiated and asked, what if that was actually a boss fight? And honestly, it works. That twist gives Egg Razor a unique flavour that helps it to stand out. Final score. It's a 10 out of 15. Egg Razor may be simple, but it delivers on spectacle, tone and creativity, reminding you that Sonic CD is going to do things in its own way. It's not perfect, but it's damn good. Finally, we have Metal Sonic with a total of 13 out of 15. This is the iconic boss fight. Ho-ho, mama! And for good reason. Racing against Metal Sonic with Robotnik tailing you in Laser Death Machine? That's not just a fight, it's a moment. Sonic CD fully leans into spectacle here, and it pays off in style, speed and pure adrenaline. Challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. As a starting point, this fight's not all that difficult, especially in Sonic Origins, where the drop dash makes a noticeable difference. It lets you recover speed more easily, making certain sections smoother to handle. Honestly, it makes the race even more fun in my opinion, but that's a topic for another time. Still, there's tension here. Mess up too many jumps, or get caught behind the barrier, and Metal Sonic will leave you in the dust, or Robotnik will literally just roast you. The pressure's real, even if it's manageable. Enjoyment. It's a 5 out of 5. This boss is so much fun. Genuinely, I love it. And it's still my personal favourite Metal Sonic fight to this day. It's got everything. High speed, high stakes, and a wicked set piece. There's a sense of rivalry and danger that makes this feel like a proper showdown, and it's paced perfectly. Every time I play this fight, it gets my heart racing, no matter how many times I have done it before. Design. It's a 5 out of 5. This fight uses Stardust Speedway's theme and layout perfectly. From the blaring music to the winding paths and deadly traps, it all feels purposeful and well executed. The environment pushes you forward, the pacing is tight, and the mechanics all feed into the tension. It's not just a good race, it's a well-crafted set piece that's genuinely exciting every time you play it. Final score? It's a 13 out of 15. The Metal Sonic race is Sonic CD at its absolute best. It's fast, stylish and full of personality, combining strong visuals, music and gameplay into one unforgettable moment. It may not be hard, but it doesn't need to be. It's so fun, it's cool, and it earns a place as one of the most iconic boss fights ever made in Sonic history. And that's a wrap on every boss from Sonic CD, ranked from the forgettable to the downright fantastic. Sonic CD might be one of the weirdest entries in the series, but that's a part of its charm. Time travel, anime-esque cutscenes, and bosses that range from clever to weird to is it even a boss fight territory. It might not have the flashiest boss fights, but it makes up for it with an abundance of style, atmosphere and some really unique moments. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit like and subscribe. There's plenty more Sonic content coming your way. Maybe Sonic 3 is next, or who knows, I might randomly just jump into some Ratchet and Clank, even I don't know. Classic Sonic games have always had memorable boss fights, but Sonic the Hedgehog 3 feels like a real turning point. When compared to the first two games, these fights feel like they are a clear step forward, and while they're not as experimental as something like, let's say Sonic CD, they're definitely no slouch when it comes to trying out fresh ideas. The bosses in Sonic 3 are varied and surprisingly cinematic, which makes them feel more ambitious than what came beforehand. Whether it's clever mechanics, dramatic setups, or just pure style, these fights feel like the real highlights of the game, and not just obstacles between zones. The even simpler bosses have a level of polish and personality that set them apart from what came before. That's not to say they are all perfect though. A few are over in a flash if I'm honest, and others lean a little bit too hard on a particular gimmick. But taken as a whole, this might be one of the strongest lineups in any 2D Sonic game. So, today we're going to rank every boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 from worst to best. Just to be clear though, this is the Sonic 3 portion of the game, and Sonic & Knuckles will be getting its own video, That is due to there actually being more boss fights in this game overall, as each act gets its own mini-boss, as well as each zone getting a boss at the end of it. Each boss will be scored out of 15 points across 3 categories. The challenge, how tough or demanding the fight actually is. Enjoyment, this is how satisfying it is to beat or how fun I found it personally. And design, this is the visual creativity and a little bit of that signature Sonic flair, you know? And without further ado, let's get into it. Here is every Sonic 3 boss ranked from worst to best. Tunnelbot. Tunnelbot is without question the weakest boss in Sonic 3. Worse still, it's strikingly similar to the Egg Digger boss from Sonic 2's Mystic Cave Zone, offering little more than a, visual palette swap and maybe a new arena. In a game that constantly pushes for mechanical variety, this fight just feels like it's on autopilot. Challenge, it's a 1 out of 5. There's almost no resistance here. Tunnelbot emerges from beneath the ground in a set pattern, giving players plenty of time to react, or more accurately, exploit. Once you know where it's going to appear, you can chain hits easily, often ending the fight before it even gets a chance to respond. And unfortunately, there's no second phase or escalation, no surprise, nothing. Enjoyment, it's a 2 out of 5. While it's not offensively bad, to me it's just not that interesting either. Tunnelbot isn't broken, but it is kinda boring. There's no mechanical satisfaction in beating it, no tension during the fight, and just no scale of spectacle. It's a boss that just kinda happens and then you're like, ugh, anyway. The fact that it's nearly a copy of Sonic 2's boss only hurts it more in my opinion. The fight wasn't a standout then, and it's even less engaging now. There's no twist or adding mechanic to the original idea either, and even the pattern is somewhat similar. Even nostalgia cannot save a boss, because the nostalgia here is what, from 2 years prior? So yeah, unfortunately, doesn't score too well in the enjoyment section. Design, it's a 2 out of 5. Thematically, I guess Tunnelbot fits the setting well enough. It looks like an underground drilling machine, and I guess that's what it is. Visually, it blends into Marble Garden Zone's earth and stone aesthetic without clashing too much. But as with the gameplay, there's just not much to latch onto here. It's a flat arena with a flat boss, and the design reflects the lack of ambition here. Final score, it's a 5 out of 15. Tunnelbot isn't a disaster despite all the negativity I've just given it. It feels more like a missed opportunity. It's the one boss in Sonic 3 that feels like it wasn't given the same creative attention as the rest. It lacks challenge, variety, and identity. It borrows from past ideas without improving on them, and what's left is a fight that's mechanically dull and emotionally flat. The Freezermobile. The Freezermobile is a blink and you'll miss it boss fight that closes out Ice Cap Zone with bare minimum of resistance. It's incredibly short, incredibly easy, and almost shockingly low stakes, especially coming in right after Big Istus. Challenge, it's a 1 out of 5. This is arguably the easiest boss in the entire game. Whether you decide to damage boost through the cold gas, or carefully dodge each puff, the fight's over in under 15 seconds either way. The freezing gas attack is predictable, slow, and easy to dodge, and Eggman doesn't mix things up with movement or variation. There's no real pressure, no risk of failure unless you're trying to get hit either. Even for newer players, the encounter poses almost no threat. I remember finding it really easy on my first playthrough, for example. It's the definition of a freebie, which might be fine for pacing, but leaves almost no room for tension or excitement. Enjoyment, it's a 3 out of 5. Strangely, despite how easy and basic it is, Freezermobile manages to be kind of fun. The entire second act of Ice Cap Zone is amazing. Like, I love the entire zone, but the second act of Ice Cap is a chef's kiss. And it's built around speed and momentum, and this boss doesn't interrupt that flow. It just puts a pretty little bow on top. There's sort of a casual satisfaction in speeding through the fights with clean hits, especially if you're aiming to clean the stage as quickly as possible. Design, it's a 2 out of 5. Unfortunately, this boss suffers heavily in the visual and conceptual department. The mech itself is bland, and one of the least interesting Eggman machines in the entire game. And the fact Eggman just hovers above the player and lowers down a platform that you can easily use to attack him, I mean, come on Eggman, you could have done better than that. There's no ingenuity here, no clever trick, just a low hovering target. The background is nearly identical to the Big Eistus fight also, with the only real difference being the shift from nighttime to daytime, which is also a downgrade in my opinion. While there's a small touch of continuity, it comes at the cost of the eerie atmosphere that made the Big Eistus fight amazing, so yeah, I can't really award too many points here either. Final score, it's a 6 out of 15. Freezermobile is as close to a throwaway boss as Sonic 3 gets, to be honest. It's over so quickly that it offers almost no challenge, and brings very little to the table in terms of design or spectacle. While it's undeniably on a low point mechanically, it's not without any merit whatsoever. The fight fits the pacing and the fast-paced nature of Ice Cat 2, and, it brings in the freezing mechanics as well. While it may not impress, it doesn't annoy me either. It's painless and relatively harmless. Bowling Spin. Bowling Spin is an unusual boss, and not necessarily in a good way. It slows the pace dramatically. Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. This is a fight that demands a little bit of patience though, and unfortunately, it's not always a good thing in a Sonic game. The slow pace and lack of urgency can make the encounter feel, let's say, tedious rather than tense. For players who prefer snappy responses style of gameplay, which Sonic 3 usually delivers in abundance, this boss feels like it's dragging its feet a little bit. Design. It's a 2 out of 5. Visually and conceptually, Bowling Spin is a mixed bag. The arena is unique, and the boss's attacks at least make some physical sense within that layout. The launching disc attack, and the Atari breakout style, at least that's how I interpret it, is goofy in a way that would have definitely worked better in Sonic CD. There's a strange experimental energy to it, like the designers were testing out physics-based gimmicks in a game that doesn't really work in Sonic, much like the pinball one in the last game for example. Final score, it's a 6 out of 15. Bowling Spin is the definition of experimental. It's slow, hands-off, and mostly passive, which makes it stand out in a game full of high-speed and engaging encounters. And standing out isn't a good thing in this instance. The fight lacks tension, impact, and ends up being more of a yawn fest rather than, fun. Ball Shooter. Ball Shooter is a curious boss that tries to inject variety in Sonic 3's roster of encounters. And while it's unique in concept and presentation, it ultimately didn't land as well as it could have. The fight feels once more, I'd say, experimental. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. This boss doesn't pose much of a threat once you understand the pattern. It cycles between 2 basic attack nodes and a set of rolling energy balls, followed by a brief vulnerability window. If you time your jumps and stay patient, the danger is minimal. The attacks are consistent and easy to read, and there's no major environmental hazard to complicate the fight. Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. To its credit, the Ball Shooter did try something different. It's not just another hit the mech until it explodes. Well, I guess it is, but there's layers to it. Anyway, you know what I mean. Different doesn't always mean better. The actual core loop of waiting and dodging the balls just to do it over and over, I don't know, it's not bad, but I'd say tedious might be a fair way of putting it. And I don't normally do this, but I actually have an idea on one way I could have improved this fight, at least in my head. I think it would have benefited from the inclusion of a moving platform. As it currently is, it stands flat and stationary in the arena and leaves little room for dynamic interaction. Introducing like a moving floor for Sonic to actually run on, or making the platform that you need to jump on move, even if it's just slightly horizontal, like left and right movements, would have added a layer of timing and positioning that would have made simple patterns feel way more engaging and added an extra layer of depth. Design is a 3 out of 5. From a design perspective, Ball Shooter is at least interesting. The hovering turret design is more unique than Eggman's typical arsenal in this game, and it matches the industrial high-tech feel of Launch Bay Zone quite well. Visually, the fight looks decent, and the decision to station the boss in one place gives it a bit of a mini turret challenge vibe, and I'm all here for it, I guess. Final score? It is a 7 out of 15. Ball Shooter stands out in Sonic 3 for trying to be different, and in some ways it succeeds, other ways it does not. It's an easy fight with limited variation, and while the design fits the zone and the idea is relatively sound, it's not enough to carry the whole encounter, unfortunately. Compared to other experimental bosses in the classic Sonic series, this one just doesn't hit the mark. The Graviton-mobile. The Graviton-mobile operates in a timed electromagnetic pull rather than gravity manipulation in terms of flipping the stage or something similar. When activated, It draws the player towards the centre using electrical arcs, restricting horizontal mobility. The boss arena also suppresses bounce height and increases the effect of weight movement. Basically, it makes you feel kind of grounded, and when you watch the ball drop, it also feels like it drops suddenly. I know that's not a literal mechanic, but they managed to capture the essence of that pretty well. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. The electromagnetic shocks from the mech activate at regular intervals and are easily anticipated. The attack's slow build-up gives the player enough time to evade with ease. The boss's hitbox is exposed predictably after this, as conveniently, Eggman decides to lower himself at an excruciatingly slow pace. Honestly, I think he is trying to lose this one, so he can show off his other mechs to Sonic. Like, we wouldn't want those to go to waste now, would we? Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. The altered physics, in terms of movement, are a brief change of pace. Player input is reduced to avoiding a single repeating threat, however, and landing hits during a generous window. The fight ends quickly once the pattern is recognised, with a minimal deviation between attempts. Design. It is a 3 out of 5. This boss integrates the theme of Carnival Night really well, to be fair, as the zone's electrical elements are the core of this boss's threat. However, the mechanics do not evolve, and the central gimmick is not expanded beyond its initial function. Final score. It is a 7 out of 15. The Graviton-mobile introduces a unique environmental constraint and synchronised attack pattern, but unfortunately it does lack mechanical depth. It's a okay design. It suits Carnival Night, as we mentioned, but the actual fight is predictable, slow, and low complexity here, so yeah, I feel like a 7 out of 15 is warranted. The Big Shaker. Right, so the name Big Shaker and where it came from is anyone's guess. It sounds more like a premium milkshake than an underwater weaponized turbine. There's no official naming for this boss that I could find in Sonic 3, so this likely comes from fan guides or internal Sega material somewhere, but it doesn't really match the vibe. The name isn't the problem though, the gameplay is. I'm joking. Anyway, challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. Big Shaker's challenge is built entirely around the environment. The boss itself doesn't attack in a traditional way. It just creates a vacuum that sucks you in and bashes you against the bottom of the mech. That means the real challenge here is positioning and how good your movement control is, not reacting to said patterns or dodging projectiles like you would see in other boss fights. The only attack it has otherwise is when it swoops in the water for brief moments, but that is relatively easy to dodge. Because you're underwater though, your movement is severely limited. That sluggishness amplifies the difficulty. Mistimed jumps or poorly aimed spin dashes can easily cost you rings or even potentially death here. It's not a hard boss in concept, but the game's systems around it, basically what I'm saying is the underwater physics, make it more punishing than it needed to be. It's a boss that demands respect from players that are used to breezing through early game zones. Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. Okay, so here's the core issue for me. Fighting underwater just isn't that fun in Sonic. The series thrives on momentum and flow, and this boss unfortunately kills both. You're constantly fighting the physics as well as the boss. And while there's a mechanic where you can spin dash out of the water, it is finicky and, to be honest, it leaves you exposed quite often. There's satisfaction in pulling it off, sure, but it's inconsistent, and that kills replayability. Design is a 3 out of 5. Visually though, Big Shaker works. The tight underwater chamber, rising bubbles around you, and the general aesthetic all kind of fit the zone's theme. The industrial machinery fits in that Hydrocity zone's aesthetic that they were going for. And there's genuine tension here. The sense that you're trapped in a pressurized death room with nowhere to go is kinda scary. It's moody and claustrophobic, let's say, and that atmosphere does go a long way. The boss itself is a solid piece of Eggman engineering. It's not flashy, but it feels like a practical underwater machine turned into a weapon. Final score is an 8 out of 15. The Big Shaker is a mixed bag. It's a rare early game boss that emphasises spatial awareness over aggression, and conceptually that makes sense. But concept doesn't always translate to execution. The underwater physics and tight spacing create a fight that feels, let's say, more restrictive than exciting. There's challenge there, sure, but it's not particularly rewarding to overcome. What saves it from a lower score in this scenario is its commitment to the atmosphere. This boss feels like it belongs here, and even if it's not fun to fight, it is a memorable boss, at least to me. It takes a risk by doing something different, even if that risk doesn't quite pay off. Fire Breath Robot. The Fire Breath Robot is a perfect example of a boss that leans more on atmosphere and setup rather than its raw difficulty. It plays a key role in Sonic 3's storytelling by triggering one of the game's most memorable moments, the island starting to burn down around you. But when it comes to the actual fight, it's pretty straightforward and brief. It teaches the player brief mechanics that then they will use further into the game at least. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. This boss isn't very challenging. The fire attack is easy to dodge, and the fight usually ends in seconds if I'm honest. I also have a personal little headcanon that piling on damage earlier in the zone when it comes to burn the scenery actually might make things easier, as you have to hit it less in the actual boss fight, but I'm not sure if that even changes the difficulty or if it's really true, so don't hold me to that. But either way, it's quick and a straightforward fight. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. I actually find some personal fun in seeing how many hits I can get in early before the boss fight kicks into full gear. This is as it's, lowering down slowly. I find it quite fun to see if I can beat it fast. And the simplicity of the fight means it doesn't get overly frustrating, and the quick pace keeps the overall fight moving. While it might lack depth or variety, it's not really a drag to play through either, so it is pretty inoffensive. The excitement from this fight really comes from the environmental impact and what it represents in the stage's progression, not just the fight mechanics. Seeing that fire burning in the background adds a layer of tension to me, and yeah, it's so cool. Design. 3 out of 5. This boss scores points for its role in stage transition. The island burning down around you, as I mentioned, adds drama and excitement, and having the boss be the cause of that before you even get to fight it, to me, that is peak game design right there. But the downside? The boss itself is incredibly simple and easy, which drags it down a little bit. Final score. It is an 8 out of 15. The Fire Breath Robot delivers more in setup than execution. It's a quick, easy fight that lacks depth, but the dramatic environmental storytelling makes it a memorable moment in the game. The Screwmobile. Unlike Big Shaker, Screwmobile actually fits the boss. Sorry, the name of Big Shaker is still getting to me. Oh man, I need to let that go. Anyway, it's a turbine-based machine that uses a water vortex as a weapon, and Screw clearly refers to the propeller mechanism at the heart of its design. It's rare for classic Sonic bosses to have names that make mechanical sense, and this one does. I'll drop it. Anyway, challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. The Screwmobile introduces a unique suction mechanic, but the challenge never really ramps up to a high level. The timing window to avoid being pulled into the vortex or slammed against the Eggman mech is fairly generous, so the fight rarely feels overwhelmingly difficult. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. When compared to the Big Shaker, for example, Screwmobile is noticeably more dynamic and engaging. The water vortex mechanic adds tension without hampering control, giving the fight a satisfying rhythm. Bait the suction, evade, and then strike when you get your chance. You're still slightly underwater, but the flow of the fight feels better and less sluggish as you're not fully submerged. The fight can be over quickly once you get the hang of it also, but pulling off perfect timing to avoid the suction entirely and land hits is rewarding enough to keep the fight very enjoyable. Design. It's a 3 out of 5. Visually and thematically, Screwmobile fits Hydrocity Zone perfectly. The design balances the amount of water just right. There's enough water in the arena to make the suction mechanic feel natural and present, but it's not so flooded that movement becomes a chore or frustrating. This balance keeps the fight from feeling like a tedious underwater slog. The machine's industrial turbine look feels like a believable underwater weapon, which complements Hydrocity Zone's aesthetic. The environment and boss design come together to reinforce the zone's mechanical and aquatic theme without detracting from the actual gameplay. Final score. It is an 8 out of 15. Screwmobile is a solid mid-game boss that balances theme and gameplay more effectively than most. It builds tension with its suction mechanic and limited arena space, but it doesn't rely on cheap hits or overly complex patterns. It's a boss that forces you to respect positioning and time your movement, especially in a game where speed can usually be the answer. It's not a standout highlight by any means, but it earns points for creativity and execution. It knows exactly what it wants to do, and it pulls it off cleanly. The Egg Scorcher Mark III. The Egg Scorcher Mark III is easily the toughest of the Egg Scorcher models so far, but that's not really saying too much since the earlier ones were pretty easy to beat. It's a solid step up in terms of challenge and spectacle, making it a satisfying encounter with Eggman in Sonic 3. Challenge. It's a 2 out of 5. This fight isn't particularly difficult, and you can usually beat it pretty quickly. The biggest threat is the instant death pit, so as long as you keep your eye on your footing, you're mostly chilling in this fight. It doesn't demand a lot of strategy or precision, making it relatively low pressure compared to other fights in the game. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. The fight's mobility, especially when Eggman's mech slips behind the waterfall and darts from side to side, adds a nice bit of flair. That movement makes landing hits feel, genuine and rewarding, so it's fun to take down this boss. While it's not the most complex fight, there's enough action to keep it engaging without it overstaying its welcome. Great early game boss. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. As Eggman's first real appearance in Sonic 3, the fight does a great job showing off what he is capable of. The airship from Flying Battery Zone can be seen bombing Sonic as he escapes with Tails, and that is super cinematic, like as an early version of a cutscene from video games. Chef's kiss, it is literally so beautiful, very well made, and it nails the drama and spectacle perfectly. Final score, it is a 9 out of 15. While it's not a major challenge, the Egg Scorcher Mark III stands out for its style and presentation. It sets the tone for Eggman's role in the game, blending fun gameplay with some genuinely cool cinematic moments. Big Eistus. Big Eistus is a solid mid-game boss that doesn't quite reach the spectacle of Sonic 3's standout encounters, but still delivers a tightly focused fight with strong thematic ties to its own. It's not flashy and doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's functional, fair, and surprisingly satisfying when approached with a bit of patience. The setting does a lot of heavy lifting here also. The chilly, dark ocean backdrop and icy platforms create an atmosphere that's cold in both tone and setting. Challenge is a 3 out of 5. At first glance, Big Eistus can seem deceptively tough. The boss swoops low with wide arcing motions, and the falling icicles add a layer of chaotic pressure. However, once you get a feel for the pattern, the fight becomes very manageable. Hugging the corners of the arena during its swooping dive is a reliable way of avoiding contact, and learning to anticipate where the icicles will land turns frustration into, a rhythm, almost the opposite. It's one of those bosses that rewards repeat playthroughs more than your raw skill on your first playthrough. The challenge comes less from reaction speed and more from reading the arena, knowing when to move and when to wait. Not too hard and not too easy. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. To me personally, there's something inherently satisfying about fights that you can gradually master through repetition, and Big Eistus definitely falls into that category. The timing-based nature of its attacks makes dodging feel rewarding, especially if you're aiming to complete the fight quickly and cleanly. While it may not be the flashiest gameplay moment, there's a good sense of flow once you're in the groove, dodging projectiles, sneaking in hits where you can, and avoiding unnecessary damage. It's not the kind of boss that wows on first impression, but you know what, it definitely grew on me. Design is the 3 out of 5. Visually and thematically, Big Eistus fits Icecap's zone beautifully. The floating ice platforms tie in neatly with the falling icicle hazard, a rare moment of environmental synergy between level and boss. And the dark, frigid ocean setting provides a quiet sense of tension. It's a scenic encounter, with just enough moodiness to give it weight. The boss design itself is a bit plain, especially when compared to the more outlandish contraptions Eggman brings out in later zones. But what's here makes sense and feels deliberate. It's a restrained design that favours cohesion over spectacle, and you know what, in that context, the boss looks great. Final score, it's a 9 out of 15. Big Eistus doesn't push boundaries, but it does do its job well. It presents a fair challenge that feels more manageable with each attempt, and its theming ties strongly to the zone it caps off. The visual atmosphere elevates slightly above just another mid-game boss, even if the fight itself doesn't leave a huge impression. Not every boss needs to be a showstopper. This is one point I always try to get across. Not everything is 10 out of 10, but sometimes the 8s out of 10, the 7 out of 10s are exactly what you're looking for, and I think Big Eistus delivers in this category perfectly. Twin Hammer. Twin Hammer is a competent and well-placed boss that kicks off Launch Base Zone. Structurally, it's pretty straightforward, a dual-armed mech that gradually loses its threat level. But what is interesting is how the fight actually gets easier over time, which subtly inverts the usual boss difficulty curve. It's a small twist that helps an otherwise, not so standout fight becomes a little more memorable. Challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. The Twin Hammer is a rare example of a boss that starts at its most difficult and progressively gets more simple. At the outset, the dual spilling arms create a surprisingly tight space, making it tricky to sneak in safe hits without getting tapped. Once you knock off one arm though, the threat level drops significantly. You gain more room, more rhythm, and a lot more control of the fight. Personally, I tend to damage boost through this one because trying to avoid the hits cleanly can be a little finicky, especially if you're trying to beat the game as quickly as possible. It's not the hardest boss by any means, but it does keep you on your toes. Enjoyment is a 3 out of 5. You know what, there's not a ton to say here for me. Twin Hammer is one of those middle of the road bosses that feels perfectly fine and doesn't leave a particularly strong impression on me either. It does what it needs to do, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it wraps up Act 1 in a way that feels mechanically clean, and not really that exciting either. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. Despite its forgettable presence, Twin Hammer is actually a well designed encounter. The difficulty is balanced and challenging enough to feel like a boss, but not so punishing that it becomes frustrating. The visual design of the mech fits Launch Base Zone's mechanical theme nicely, and seeing Eggman deploy the machine beforehand adds a small cinematic touch that gives the fight a bit more narrative weight. It feels more purposeful than some of the more drop-in boss fights earlier in the game. The transformation from a 2-arm threat to a 1-arm cleanup also adds light progression elements that makes the design feel a little more dynamic than it did at first glance. Final score, it's a 10 out of 15. Twin Hammer may not be the most memorable boss in Sonic 3, but it serves its purpose effectively and needs to be complimented for that. It has a unique difficulty curve and a solid thematic fit, and a design that supports the tone of Launch Base Zone. While the fight itself isn't that difficult, there's nothing inherently wrong with it either. It's a classic case of functional and flashy in one. Beam Rocket. Beam Rocket is one of the most polished and satisfying bosses in Sonic 3. No, scratch that, in the Sonic trilogy, and a fitting climax for the original and Knuckles version of the game. Challenge. It's a 3 out of 5. There's a surprising amount to manage here. The dual laser beams are fast enough to demand proper timing, and the vertical movement of Eggman's mech keeps you guessing about positioning. Add to that the spiked ball mounted on top of the mech, which can easily catch you off guard during an attempted hit, and you've got a fight that rewards patience and pattern recognition. Enjoyment. It's a 4 out of 5. This boss just feels good to fight. It's one of those bosses. It hits that rare sweet spot of being cinematic and interactive. The fight has that distinct final boss energy that I love, especially in the context of Sonic 3. Fighting Eggman in the sky, with Launch Base Zone in the background, and nothing but the blue below, it gives a sense of urgency and scale that few other fights in the game deliver. The varied attack pattern and smart pacing keep things from getting stale, and there's a real satisfaction in learning the rhythm and taking the mech down cleanly. Design. It's a 5 out of 5. Beam Rocket is a standout from a design perspective. It's not just that it looks cool, although it definitely does look really cool, it's that the mech itself is functionally built to test the player's spatial awareness and timing. Every part of the machine serves a purpose: the lasers, the spike ball, the movement pattern. It's a well-balanced fight that feels deliberate, not improvised. The sky-based arena amplifies the drama and makes this feel like a true set-piece moment. It's also one of the few times Eggman's mech genuinely feels intimidating to me. This is obviously no offense to you, Eggman, if you're watching this, I'm deeply sorry, but most of your mechs kind of don't look that scary or effective. Anyway, final score, 12 out of 15. Beam Rocket delivers on both presentation and mechanics. It's one of the best executed fights in the entire game, with a strong attack pattern, a unique arena, and a solid sense of escalation. While it doesn't quite reach the peak difficulty of what a boss could in the classic trilogy, it's just damn fun, and I do really enjoy fighting this boss. The Drillmobile. Drillmobile is a brilliant boss encounter that completely shifts the tone and structure of Sonic 3's usual end of zone fights. After the lackluster tunnel bots earlier on in the zone, this airball showdown instantly elevates Marble Garden from forgettable to memorable. It's cinematic, fast-paced, and mechanically distinct, not just for this zone, but for the entire game. It's one of those rare moments where Sonic 3 fully leans into spectacle, and it does not sacrifice any gameplay whatsoever. Challenge, it's a 3 out of 5. While the presentation is dramatic, the actual difficulty level is fairly manageable. Eggman's attacks are slow and easy to anticipate, especially once you recognise the wind-up pattern of his spinning drill. His positioning above the player offers some room to react also, and since he telegraphs his moves clearly, you're rarely caught off guard if I'm honest. However, the absence of a proper floor introduces a unique twist to the risk-reward dynamic. When you lose your rings during this fight, they don't bounce around like they normally would do on another boss, for example. They fall straight down, gone, poof, not to return. That alone raises the stakes a little bit. A single mistake can cost you dozens of rings, with no chance of recovery. It creates a low-key tension that's less about avoiding death and more about preserving your safety net. Thankfully, the fall below isn't instant death, because if it was, oh, I would be so angry. There would be so much rage. But if you do slip, Tails will catch you, reinforcing his role as a true partner here. It's difficult to imagine Tails as being Sonic's equal, especially after Sonic 2 where he definitely feels like a sidekick, but in this boss fight, he definitely feels more like a partner than a sidekick. Enjoyment, it's a 4 out of 5. This is the highlight of Marble Garden Zone. It's fast, fun, and completely different from anything you've done up to that point. The fact that the fight takes place mid-air also, with Sonic being carried by Tails, changes the entire feel of the counter. There's no static arena, no walls or platforms, just you, Tails, and Eggman fighting in the open sky. That dynamic keeps the fight feeling light and exhilarating. There's also a great balance between cinematic spectacle and interactive gameplay. You're still in control, still making decisions, and still reacting in real time. The tension builds naturally as Eggman swoops in and out, and the pacing never really drags because of it. It's fun on your first run, and still holds up on replays thanks to how cleanly it all comes together. Design, it is a 5 out of 5. This is one of the best designed bosses in Sonic 3, hands down. It breaks away from the usual template and fully commits to a unique concept. You're fighting in mid-air, like come on, how cool is that? With no ground beneath you, relying on Tails to keep you airborne as we mentioned, and it really does make him feel like a genuine ally. Final score, it's a 12 out of 15. Drumobile turns what could have been an end of zone boss into one of the most memorable moments in Sonic 3. Like, whenever I think of Sonic 3, it is one of the first things that pops into my head. It looks incredible, plays smoothly, and introduces new ideas without confusing or overwhelming the player. The challenge is fairly modest, yes, but the fight's unique structure and atmosphere more than make up for that. Big Arm. Big Arm is a powerhouse of a final boss, at least for the first half of the game. A perfect storm of speed, tension, and style that brings Sonic 3 to a dramatic close. It doesn't just look and sound intimidating, it is intimidating. Challenge, it's a 5 out of 5. This is one of the most difficult fights in the entire classic Sonic trilogy. It earns that distinction through speed, unpredictability, and timing-specific mechanics. Big Arm's movement is aggressive and erratic, with less predictable patterns than previous bosses. The arm swoops are fast and hard-hitting, and the grab attack can instantly slam you into the ground for major damage, even when you're in supersonic form. The timing window for jumping and landing hits is tighter than usual, requiring real precision. Combine that with the fact this fight comes immediately after Beam Rocket, and you've got yourself a serious test of skill. It's genuinely tough, and you know what, if you go in unprepared, you're in for a fun time. Enjoyment, 4 out of 5. There's raw excitement to this fight that never really fades. It's fast, flashy, and stressful in all the right ways. You're fully engaged right from the second it starts, and the challenge never lets up. The fact you're still in the sky with Launch Base Zone crumbling below adds to the urgency, and while the fight is tough, it's also incredibly satisfying once you get into the rhythm. There's tension here that few other bosses manage to replicate. It's not the kind of boss you casually breeze through. Design is a 4 out of 5. Big Arm is a well-crafted mech with personality and presence. It's got a distinct look that stands out from the rest of Eggman's creations. Bulky, intimidating, and undeniably cool. This is Eggman in full desperation mode, and the design reflects that. The sky-high set piece adds drama, though it's admittedly the same arena used for Beam Rocket. Still, the custom boss theme helps the fights stand out on its own, and what a theme it is. Straight up banger. The mech's animation, attack variety and sound design all come together beautifully in a strong, stylish closer. Final score is a 13 out of 15. Big Arm is an exceptional final boss, fast and unpredictable, and packed with abundance of personality. It takes everything Sonic 3 has built up and pushes it one step further, delivering a fight that feels genuinely climatic. While the reuse of the arena is a small drawback, the combination of challenging mechanics and striking visuals makes for one of the best boss fights in the entire franchise. And that is every boss from Sonic the Hedgehog 3, ranked from the lame to the downright intense. This game brought some seriously cool ideas to the table. This is quite literal in Ice Cap Zone's case. Anyway, and while not every fight's a banger, the highs are really high. Mid-air battles, dramatic finales, and some of Eggman's best, and arguably worst mechs, all packed into one game. If you had fun. If you were to ask me what makes a classic Sonic game a classic Sonic game, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is probably the answer I would give you. Excellent platforming, fast-paced action, and of course, wicked boss fights. Having already analysed the boss fights from the Sonic 3 portion of the game, I thought it was about time to rank the Sonic and Knuckles segment. Just like before, each boss will be receiving a score out of 15 points across 3 separate categories, with 5 points available in each section. The categories are Challenge, how difficult I found the boss fight, Enjoyment, how fun the boss was to fight, and Design, how well was it crafted, and how was it as an overall experience. Also, I will not be ranking Mecha Sonic reenacting the bosses that we have seen in earlier games, as we have already covered these bosses in my previous videos, so if you are curious on their scores, be sure to jump on over there. Oh yeah, one more thing, it will be a ranking of the experience the player has with Sonic and Tails, rather than the Knuckles story. Well, I feel like I've wasted enough of your time. I think it's about time we jump into our lowest ranked boss from Sonic and Knuckles. Barrier Eggman. So, our lowest ranking boss today is Barrier Eggman. It's a shame really, as I absolutely adore Flying Battery Zone, but unfortunately its bosses leave something to be desired. I have a feeling we will discuss Gapshaw later on, the boss from Act 1 in Flying Battery Zone, but in the meantime, Barrier Eggman just isn't very hard. The dominant strategy here is to run to the far right side of the screen and wait for the big blue beam to completely miss you, as it is just so damn slow. It takes too long to charge up to pose any real threat, and even when you do get hit, the arena is flat and a generous size, so grabbing rings and recovering is relatively easy. This then left me with a challenge rating of 2 out of 5. Enjoyment. It's a 2 out of 5. The more bosses I rank, the more I begin to learn what I enjoy, and this version of Barrier Eggman falls into the bracket of bosses that I don't particularly think too much about after beating it. It's slow, it's easy, and it's not particularly unique, so there isn't much to hang on to there in terms of enjoyment. I don't hate it, I guess, so at least it gets rewarded for that. Design. It's also a 2 out of 5. Barrier Eggman is a title that had already been utilised in Sonic 2, so it was disappointing to see this recycled. In fact, this boss is supposed to be an interpretation of the original Sonic 2 boss fight that we see during Ring Fortress Zone, but unfortunately it is an inferior version. Gone are the spiky platforms, so it is much easier to grab your rings after making a mistake, and the arena size here is much more generous despite the gradual shrinking mechanic. Even the background is way too similar to that of Wing Fortress Zone, so unfortunately the boss struggles design wise also. Therefore, this leaves Barrier Eggman with a final score of 6 out of 15. Not a great start. Our second from bottom boss is Gapshaw. Gapshaw manages to achieve a challenge rating of 2 out of 5. This boss is laughably easy, unfortunately. It is very rare that you will lose to it, and most of the time it renders you doing nothing, so it is hard to award many points here. The one thing in its favour is that it does take a little bit longer than some of the other boss fights in the game, due to the fact it needs to damage itself rather than Sonic doing the damage to it. It's artificial lengthening of the fight perhaps, but nonetheless, it's not an instant win at least. Our enjoyment rating is a 2 out of 5. I mean, it's not like I don't enjoy this fight, so it would feel harsh if I ranked it lower. Instead, I would argue that it's just not the best core gameplay loop, as waiting for the enemy boss to damage themselves rather than you doing the damage just isn't that fun to me personally. The dominant strategy literally being walk off the edge as the long wind up animation occurs right before the boss is about to hit you isn't the peak of Sonic & Knuckles, I can certainly say that much. Design, it's a 3 out of 5. However, the design is pretty neat. Player expectation is subverted, as the first time you play this boss, you are likely to be caught off guard. The typical safety net of the end goal has instead become your boss. A sign of Eggman finally learning, perhaps? Nonetheless, only the boss can finish this level for you, and it is still acting as the end of the zone, I guess. Only once you've beaten it, of course. What a cruel, cruel decision, Sega. Cruel decision. Our final score for Gapsule is a 7 out of 15. To round off the bottom 3 in this list, we have the Guardian from Sandopolis Zone Act 1. Design is a 5 out of 5, surprisingly. This time around, I think it makes more sense to discuss the design aspect of the boss first, due to its importance. The Guardian makes quite the entrance, and perfectly establishes the setup for Act 2 of Sandopolis Zone. As Sonic and Tails arrive, the pyramid that they will need to traverse through rises from the ground, and changes the scenery of the fight to look rather epic. Then, the door to the pyramid shuts suddenly, and the Guardian of the pyramid arises from the ground, blocking any progression. This is awesome storytelling. Not being able to hurt the solid sentient rock also captures the essence of the zone, and provides some ludonarrative harmony here. Sonic and the player are being told that the giant sentient rock is not a typical Eggman mech, and therefore it is not fought like one. It suits the zone perfectly, and honestly, I don't think the design of this boss could be improved, nor does it need to be. Challenge, it is a 1 out of 5. Unfortunately though, this is where the positives do end. The Guardian can literally be manipulated to the point that it can be beaten with one successful jump, and it doesn't even need to be well timed. You gradually lure it over to the quicksand located to the left of the pyramid, and then run underneath it when it jumps, and simply knock it back into the quicksand. That is the entire fight, if I can call it one. This is definitely the easiest boss in Sonic & Knuckles. Enjoyment, it's a 2 out of 5. It's a shame really. The set piece is so cool, and I really want to award more points for that, but I can't rank what isn't there. I did record my first ever attempt against this boss, so at least I can say it feels more like a boss fight until you learn the exploitations. I enjoyed the narrative moments here, but not the fight. Therefore, the Guardian receives a final score of 8 out of 15. Next up, we have the very first boss in this portion of the game, Hey Ho. For our challenge rating, it receives a 2 out of 5. It may be one of the harder first bosses in the series, but despite this, it is still relatively tame. I think it's likely due to the fact that it was meant to be the second half of Sonic 3, so it's all one game, so they couldn't make it too easy, but also then it needed to, have a difficulty level that was fine for people jumping in at this point. The wooden block projectile it hurls at Sonic does travel very fast, but ultimately, you can beat this boss in a heartbeat without much trouble. Enjoyment, it's a 3 out of 5. I mean, it is fairly fun to fight, and it does an excellent job of serving as the 14th boss in the Sonic & Tails story overall, as well as being the first boss as we mentioned. So yeah, it is relatively fun. Design, it receives a 4 out of 5. It does a very good job of implementing the actual zone environment into the boss fight. You're in a dense mushroom forest, and this robot has clearly been placed here by Eggman to destroy the scenery and stop Sonic. Final score, it receives a 9 out of 15. Following on from that, we have the Egg Golem. The Egg Golem receives a challenge rating of 4 out of 5. It is a boss fight with some challenge embedded within it. It's never really explained how Eggman managed to take control of a giant stone golem, but honestly, it doesn't have to be. We already know Eggman is an evil genius, and it's easy to believe he'd cook up some convincing scheme to possess a golem hidden in a dark pit at the bottom of a pyramid he had no way of knowing Sonic would ever reach. After all, Sonic would have to cross a massive desert just so happen to arrive at the exact same spot where the pyramid emerges and then beat the Guardian to get inside. Clearly that is all part of Eggman's master plan, of course it is. In all seriousness though, Egg Golem requires a little more patience and strategy when compared to some of the other bosses on the list. Not only does the player need to hit the weak spot of the Golem, they then need to attack Eggman after this in order to cause actual damage. This mechanic alone massively increases the overall fight time and difficulty. On top of this, it is pretty easy to get hit by the Golem if you are careless with your jumps. Enjoyment is a 2 out of 5. It can be a little aggravating at times, as the boss is, a little bit more lengthy than some of the others, especially for a mid-game boss, and that does slightly impact how much fun I have, as after playing the level that shall not be named, Sandopolis Act 2, I kinda just want to get out of there and not have to suffer any longer. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. Like the Act 1 Guardian boss, this is a well-designed boss, with strong synergy between zone and its encounter. The Golem literally incorporates the environment into its design, being built from the same sandstone as the pyramid Sonic just explored. It's dark, it's dangerous, and it's thematically spot on. Therefore, the Egg Golem of Sandopolis Act 2 shall be receiving a final score of 10 out of 15. We're going all the way back to Mushroom Hill Zone for this one, but this time it's going to be Act 2 with the Jetmobile. Our challenge rating for Jetmobile is a 3 out of 5. I often find that Sonic bosses are quite easy to destroy quickly, especially in the original trilogy, but this boss does break that mold successfully. It reacts to each hit by retreating and forcing Sonic to run and dodge to catch up. While it isn't hard to do so, it does require some precise platforming and fast reflexes in order to beat this boss well. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. It is fun to fight, and the intensity provided by the fast reflexes that are required makes it feel action-packed. A lot of retro Sonic bosses have a stationary arena, but Jetmobile opts for a moving battleground, and this alone provides a whole lot of fun in my opinion. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. Right, you guys are going to have to stick with me on this one because it's going to be a lengthy section, but here we go. The camera pans alongside the player in a way that makes the fight feel fast and intense, as we have mentioned prior. But in addition to this, the arena suits that of Mushroom Hill Zone perfectly, as well as the first boss in the zone, Hey Ho, that we spoke about earlier. Sticking with the deforestation theme perfectly. I don't know if I'm overanalyzing here, but an interpretation I managed to depict is that the typical theme of villainy that Eggman often provides is the juxtaposition between a calm, natural present versus his preference of the cyber dystopian future. And this boss hits that narrative theme perfectly, especially when analysed along Hey Ho. Hey Ho is the first stage of deforestation, when he's seen chopping down the forest in Act 1, but then in Act 2 of Mushroom Hill Zone, the mushroom forest appears to have been claimed. The trees are no longer your ally, but instead, Eggman has manufactured them into your enemy and installed mechanized spike balls, forcing Sonic to evade them in order to catch Eggman and beat him. Ultimately though, Eggman's demise here is brought to him by a very large tree, and I do find this quite amusing. Amazing attention to detail by Sega here. I can promise you that's going to be one of the longest design sections in the video. Don't worry, they're not all going to be that lengthy. But Jetmobile does receive a final score of 10 out of 15. Very respectable. Next up, we have the Hotmobile from Lava Reef Zone Act 2. For Hotmobile's challenge score, it's going to be receiving a 2 out of 5. It's not a particularly hard boss to best. The platforms you have to jump from do not move that fast. Also, when the screen tilts, if you've made it to this point in the game, you are likely good enough to execute the segment with ease, as your core mechanics will be more than good enough to master the jumps that require little precision. In addition to this, if you have a fire shield in Lava Reef Zone Act 2, it makes the entire fight significantly easier, as you can stand safely on the lava and don't need to worry as much about the tilting platforms. Enjoyment. It is a 4 out of 5. It is pretty fun to fight though. Hotmobile makes up for the lack of challenge by being a unique experience that is well executed. It isn't annoying to fight, and I love platforming video games in case you couldn't tell, so a chance to enjoy that is certainly appreciated. Design. It is a 4 out of 5. The design here is phenomenal. The boss of Act 1, Yeet Arms, sees Sonic at the top of the lava fall, while Hotmobile sees him all the way at the bottom with the pool of lava beneath. Excellent storytelling, as it really makes both bosses feel connected to one another rather than a separate encounter with the same theme. A classic Eggman trope of the boss damaging itself is executed in a much better fashion here than most other occurrences, and at least it isn't the mech hitting itself deliberately over and over. I'm looking at you, Gapshul, I'm looking at you. Final score, it receives a 10 out of 15. It is a very, very well executed boss. For our first entry out of the endgame bosses, we have the Death Egg Zone Act 2 boss, Death Ball. Death Ball receives a challenge rating of 4 out of 5. This boss took me a while to get comfortable with, and honestly, I don't blame anyone who struggles with it at first. The timing window to damage the mech directly is extremely precise, to the point where landing a clean hit feels more like luck than skill. Realistically, it's far easier to weaponize Eggman's own robots against him, but even that strategy gets complicated thanks to the cramped arena and the disorientating control inversion when you're upside down. It's a fight that demands patience as much as it demands reflexes, and the whole thing can feel a little finicky. Enjoyment. Unfortunately, it's a 2 out of 5. I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. I didn't enjoy this encounter much at all. Between the upside down movement, the awkward hit timings and the tight space, the fight ends up feeling more irritating than engaging, let's say. There is a satisfaction in finally figuring it out, but that's more of a relief to me than actual fun. Design though, it's a 3 out of 5. I'll give credit where it's due, the concept fits the zone perfectly, and it's an undeniably cool to see Eggman operating the machine externally via a control panel. It's a nice break from the usual I'll sit in the cockpit and spam attacks routine. It has a unique flavour, but ultimately it still feels like a gimmick boss more than a thrilling showdown. The idea is solid, but the execution lacks the intensity or flow that makes the other Sonic bosses more memorable to me. Therefore, the Death Ball will be receiving a final score of 9 out of 15. Next up, we have the one and only Knuckles the Echidna. For our boy, we're going to be giving him a challenge 3 out of 5. Unlike some of the Eggman fights, the hitbox here isn't as generous. A little more precision is required, and due to Knuckles having a similar moveset to Sonic, obviously with a few differences like the glide, it adds a level of challenge that is unexpected. It is a fairly fast fight in a tight arena and feels more like a brawl than most other fights in the game. The only downside is that it can be beaten fairly quickly, as unlike many of the Eggman mechs, there is no phase switch or major cooldown time to let the boss plan their next attack. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. When compared to the other Sonic rival fights in the series, this one doesn't quite hit the same highs for me. Racing Metal Sonic in Sonic CD was exhilarating and so much fun. It was tough and fast paced, and it made for an amazing rival battle. But unfortunately, the Knuckles fight just does not feel as good to me. It isn't bad by any means, like no insult to it, and it adds perfectly in the storytelling department, but as an actual fight, it is very much in the fine category for me personally. In the design category, however, it is a 5 out of 5. There is no way I could not give this boss max score. Up to this point in the game, Knuckles had tried absolutely everything to stop you. Falls from high places, drowning you, explosives, a candy floss machine. Wait, maybe not a candy floss machine, but it's all there. It's clear that Angel Island is Knuckles' playground, and he uses it to its optimal potential, outsmarting and thwarting Sonic and Tails by being one step ahead of them every time. But finally, Sonic and Tails have him backed into a corner. No traps, no plans, and no escapes. It's a pure test of skill, and it synergizes perfectly with the story of the game to provide some ludonarrative harmony once more. It's a must-win fight for Knuckles, and it is easy to get the sense of desperation from him. Of course, right after this, the Master Emerald is stolen, but the less said on that, the better, for Knuckles' sake. Therefore, Knuckles the Echidna will be receiving a final score of 11 out of 15. Wait a minute, isn't this the Flying Battery Zone theme again? But I swear we've already done 2 bosses. Wait a minute, there's a 3rd boss, the Hangmobile. As a challenge score, Hangmobile receives a 4 out of 5. Hangmobile is unique in the way it starts, as this is a surprise boss that begins instantly after the defeat of Barrier Eggman, which we ranked right at the start of the video as our lowest boss. Almost instantly after Barrier Eggman's defeat, the arena begins to rise, and it is very easy for Sonic to get crushed here, either through rushing or being too slow. Both of which have happened to me at some point in history, but that's not a story for today. And what is your reward for surviving this arena of death as it ascends? Is it A, a chili dog, B, all of the Chaos Emeralds, or C, 20% discount at your local supermarket? That's right, viewer, if you guessed option D, another boss fight, then give yourself a pat on the back, as that is exactly what the developers award us for completing this task. Unlike the other bosses within Flying Battery Zone, Hangmobile does require some precise platforming and some well executed jumps. Many things can damage you here: the spiky hands, which hold the mech onto the arena you are fighting on, the main swing attack, although admittedly this does move a little slowly, and the sneaky flamethrower, which always manages to catch me off guard at least once in the fight. When combining everything, Hangmobile is a fairly challenging sequence. Enjoyment is a 4 out of 5. It has so many elements to the fight that I can't help but enjoy it. Well, I guess dying to it could be a problem due to the respawn being a pain, but we don't have to worry about that, right? Anyways, it is fun to run through Barrier Eggman, the Rising Arena, and Hangmobile successfully without dying, and it definitely provides a sense of satisfaction that not all fights in this game provide. Design is a 3 out of 5. It can't achieve a perfect score here, unfortunately, as the stage does still feel very similar to that of Big Arm from the first half of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as well as Wing Fortress from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The raised platform in the Sky trope had already been explored a few times at this point in the series, so it does suffer a little bit here. However, the boss does have multiple ways to damage the player due to the complexity of the boss itself, so it ends up being a pretty solid design nonetheless. Therefore, the Hangmobile will be receiving a final score of 11 out of 15. Red Eye. Red Eye received a challenge rating of 4 out of 5. Red Eye was a fairly decent challenge that caught me off guard. Initially, it is one of those damage boost through the attack bosses for me, as there is so much on the screen that I find it less stressful to use my frames to do the damage and then grab some rings to make sure I don't die. The other option is to stand towards the edge of the arena and patiently dodge the spikes after you hit the mech. However, that is only the first phase. For the second phase, it is easier to be a little bit more tactical, as once you're on one of the platforms, it is much easier to get the hits in and deal some big damage. The platforms spin very fast in this phase, and when it combos with the laser, it can be very difficult to dodge everything. It is also easy to lose all of your rings, as if you get caught on one of the platforms as they are spinning, well, the fight certainly just got harder to say the least. Enjoyment. It's a 3 out of 5. The boss works well enough, and I must admit, when I first played it, the second phase transition really caught me off guard, as I genuinely thought I had beaten it due to the explosion animation that occurs. The difficulty also adds to the fun for me, as it forces me to lock in, as I really want to overcome the challenge. For design, Red Eye receives a 4 out of 5. It's a very well designed boss overall. It is clearly an integral part of this space station we are travelling through, and it fits that overall theme perfectly. Although it does kinda remind me of the sentient steering wheel dude from WALL-E, you know the guy I mean? Anyways, with it being hard but a fair challenge, it is certainly well crafted and deserves its rating of 4. Therefore, Red Eye receives a final score of 11 out of 15. And with that, we are officially entering our top 3 bosses from the Sonic and 3 Knuckles portion of the game. Who is taking third place? Well, that is the Doomsday Zone. Challenge is a 2 out of 5, unfortunately. For a final boss, ultimately, this is easy. I've beaten Sonic 3 and Knuckles many times now, but never actually went for the true ending in collecting all of the emeralds. But unfortunately, collecting the emeralds is much more of an ordeal than this boss fight, even with the multiple phases considered. The first phase is dodging the asteroids and Eggman's projectiles in order to secure as much time as possible for the remainder of the fight. You will lose your super or hypersonic form if the ring counter hits 0, so it acts as your timer here. However, the ring supply is generous, and you are still able to grab rings even during your damage frames, so there isn't much pressure from the first phase. It's certainly artificial pressure. The second phase is the most difficult, but it still isn't particularly challenging. You simply dodge Eggman's homing missiles and then direct them into the cockpit of his spaceship. They are large and have a pretty decent hitbox, but they are slow moving and easy to manipulate, thus they do not create too much of a challenge. And finally is phase 3. This feels more like a cinematic moment than an actual phase in the boss fight. You simply have to knock into Eggman's robot with your hyper or supersonic form until his mech breaks, and you can then secure the Master Emerald. It is easy to get hit here, which I will give it credit for, and it can affect how quickly you complete the fight, but as you do not take damage like you normally would, the consequences are low, and therefore the fight is relatively tame. Enjoyment is a 5 out of 5. Having said that, this zone is so much freaking fun. Words cannot do justice as to how much fun I had playing through this zone. I felt the power of Hypersonic and the intensity of the fight. The final boss should feel amazing to fight, and this battle not only felt like the end of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but it felt like the end of an era. The storytelling, the animation, the music are all peak Sonic the Hedgehog design. It is a 5 out of 5 once more. It's harder to find something that isn't perfectly designed for a final showdown here, other than the difficulty, but we'll gloss over that. Sure, it may be on the easy side, but otherwise this boss is just mwah, chef's kiss. It follows the story of Sonic 3 perfectly, and it establishes an awesome set piece. It rounds off everything with a pretty bow on top. It's one of those moments that make you sit back and go, now this is gaming. So the final score for the Doomsday Zone is a 12 out of 15. So who is going to be taking second place in our video today? Well, that is Heat Arms from Lava Reef Zone Act 1 Challenge. It's a 4 out of 5. Heat Arms has a few tough moments that really crank up the difficulty of this boss fight. First off, you've got 2 arms on each side of the screen, sliding from left to right at a pretty quick pace, which means you have to time your jumps very carefully. I found the best moment to land a hit is when the arms are either rising or falling. Any other time, and they're surprisingly hard to reach. But the real threat here is the barrage of small fireballs that the rotating discs spit out. They blend into the background, they fire rapidly, and they travel fast. On top of that, you're often dodging multiple fireballs at once. Definitely some stressful stuff. The other phase of the boss fight switches things up with a single massive robot hand that tries to crush you. Compared to these smaller arms, this phase is way easier to deal with. The hand's 3 fingers slam down to squash Sonic, but the attack animation takes so long that the player has plenty of time to react and move out of the way. Enjoyment. It's a 4 out of 5. As a fun fact for the day, I absolutely adore Lava Reef Zone for several reasons. The music, their layout, and of course, the boss fights. They're also well executed here, and Heat Arms is no exception. That lava waterfall? Wait, falling lava? Lava fall? Whatever we call it, the descending lava in the background makes for an awesome set piece. I've always felt that anything fire themed is usually tied to the end game content because of the spike in difficulty, and Sonic & Knuckles is no different. We're entering the final stretch of the game here, and the tension skyrockets. I always have an abundance of fun with this boss. Design. It's a 4 out of 5. Once again, Sonic 3 and Knuckles shows just how well designed its bosses really are. The entire of Lava Reef Zone builds up to this moment. After Sonic traverses lava pits, avoids dangerous booby traps, and climbs through tight, claustrophobic tunnels, he finally arrives here. The developers did an excellent job of portraying the danger Sonic is walking into. There's this constant sense of urgency, the boss's speed, the rolling lava fall in the background, and even the rocky platform you're standing on looks like it would be unstable and like it could crumble at any moment. And as players, we know that can happen, or at least could happen, thanks to the falling rocks and collapsing platforms seen earlier in the zone. It has a false appearance, as it looks like one misstep or one mistimed jump could be the end. It's incredibly well executed. Unfortunately, I do have to knock off 1 point for one thing, however. The fireballs blend into the background a little too well, especially when several are on the screen at once. It definitely ramps up the difficulty, but probably not in a way the developers actually intended. Therefore, Heat Arms will be receiving an amazing score of 12 out of 15. And for the best boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, we have the Kyodai Eggman Robo. It has a challenge rating of 5 out of 5. More patience is required here than with your typical endgame boss in the Sonic series. With each individual finger demanding 3 hits, the health pool is just absurd, making this the most durable boss in this game by a wide margin. Its crush attack, thankfully, telegraphs clearly and behaves similarly to that of Heat Arms, so this part isn't too difficult once you understand the rhythm, but the real challenge begins after you finish the first phase. The moment the robot collapses, the game throws you into a full sprint. Eggman chases you down, and if he catches you, that's it. Instant death, and a complete restart of the fight. To damage the mech in this second phase, you must strike the nose where the flamethrowers fire from, then immediately hit the emerald core, just before Eggman unleashes his laser beam. The timing is incredibly tight, and one mistimed jump can cost you everything. Enjoyment is a 4 out of 5. What's not to love? This fight oozes tension from start to finish and absolutely nails that climactic final showdown energy. The chase especially stands out to me. Chaotic, stressful, and exhilarating all at once. Every victory feels well earned, and I swear I breathe a sigh of relief every single time I pull it off. Design. It is a 5 out of 5. This is it, the moment the whole game has been building towards. Sonic and Tails once again pursue Eggman, but this time within the heart of the Death Egg itself. And just when it seems like you've seen all of his tricks, Eggman unleashes the Kyodai Eggman Robo, his ultimate trump card. Its massive scale, the multi-phase structure, and the dramatic chase sequence all combine to create one of the most memorable finales in the series. It's cinematic, it's intimidating, and it feels like a genuine payoff to everything the player has endured up to this point. An absolutely phenomenal final boss. Final score. It's a 14 out of 15. The only thing stopping this from getting a perfect score is the fact that it is not the true ending. And that is that. Every boss from Sonic 3 and Knuckles ranked. What a journey this has been, and I genuinely hope I didn't stir up too much controversy with my picks. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a truly special game, and easily one of my favourites in the entire series. I have a lot of love for it, and I can only hope I manage to do it justice with this video. This also marks a pretty important milestone for this little mini-series of mine. I've now officially ranked every boss across the Mega Drive/Genesis titles, at least for the mainline games. It's been an absolute blast to work through all of them, and honestly, I am not stopping here. I'm already thinking about where to go next with the Sonic franchise because I just can't get enough of his games. Whether that ends up being more rankings, reviews, or just a general discussion, I'm not entirely sure yet. But one thing I do know is that I can't wait to start the next video already. Thank you all so much for the support. These videos were a ton of fun to make, and seeing that you guys enjoyed watching them truly did just make me happy, if I'm honest. Feel free to share your own rankings or thoughts in the comments below, as it is always awesome reading how you guys feel about the boss fights in this trilogy. Thank you for watching everyone, and take it easy. Bye bye.